Fourth, now this one gets to the nitty-gritty that we used to have to do when we came through the school system. You know how you had to find the parents who knew the real answers? Not the general stuff that was shared? What if we really were serious about having forums so that parents could find the real answers and ask the real questions? Not just the selected ones. Because what we're talking about in the school district is that certain people have the information. They keep the information. They don't share the information, and they wonder why the other scales have slided. So those were some of the elements we said that would help in a parent survival guide. We also came up with the student survival guide. Because some of the parents were saying, our kids need to be responsible for it. But do they know, or do they read it, or is it in a format that they would embrace? Did anybody see Google yesterday? Oh, well, it's not good to use an analogy you haven't seen, but I'll describe it a little bit. It was just a little Google screen. You know, you've seen Google when we go Googling things, simple. But it was teaching about history. It was teaching about the Pony Express. Now, we don't want snail mail forgetting history, but there was a road map from California to Missouri, and there was a little runner. And each point, if he hit a question or a problem, he could find the answer right there. So what we're saying is change the medium in which we give the information. It does not have to be a static book. But we know the kids don't know their road maps, and we know the parents don't want to have to get to their 10th and 11th year with their children and find out they do not have the classes they need. So those are two of the goals from the table in the back, those guys back there, and the one standing on the side. Thank you, Thelma.
Thank you. Let's table in the middle here. You always supposed to be the spokesperson now. Good evening. My name is Toshi Davis, and I'll try to do justice to what we talked about at the table. I also was a graduate of Columbia High School in '84, so a long time ago. And I'm worried because I have a young man in Marshall. And one of the things I brought up at my table is the statistics of what happens by just third grade at Jefferson has me frightened and looking at private schools. So anyway, one of the things that we talked about, at least for the AP, to address AP, was I'm still confused at why we can't provide open access to AP courses. Some of the action steps we talked about was allow for meaningful involvement of students and parents in course selection process, provide a realistic prep course to enable students to move levels up. Young ladies at our table who are students here at Columbia said, once you're locked into a level, you can't get out. There's no meaningful path to move from one level to another. Allow guidance counselors to be able to weigh in and to complete the placements of students along with parent input. And then the other thing that came up, no matter where the child was, whether they were in high school or even all the way down to grammar school, there's not a great degree of transparency of what's happening in the classroom. And to understand, one of the folks at our table said she discovered in her first grade class that the children were in 4 levels within the class, and that even though you were getting information on how the children were progressing, you didn't necessarily know what level your kid was in unless you proactively were asking, what group does this little red table mean? So that came up. The other thing is, from the young ladies who are actually in Columbia High School, they said, make the district decidedly not racist, so that's a smart goal, i.e. So of course our young people are a little bit more radical, right? Ending institutional racism, right? So allow for mobility within the levels. Then I don't quite understand the second point, but discipline across levels. So behavior determining levels in early grades. So I think the concern there was if there is discipline issues, that being a barometer for academic ability, and they're not necessarily correlated. And then there is the consistent concern about why not just D-level, right, except for AP. So those were possible action steps that we also talked about at our table. Thank you. Next table in the front here.
The best one.
No, we still got 2 over there.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Linda Gadsby, and I have a son who's here at Columbia. He's in the 10th grade. He went to South Orange Middle. And he has been both in and out of the district. So our table came up with 3 goals, and I'm going to go through them quickly. The first one was to increase professional development at the elementary school level for cultural awareness, classroom management, differentiated instruction, and inclusion practices. We had some specific action steps. We wanted to set up an action committee to obtain data about the current practices. Essentially, we don't think there's enough professional development, and we think some of these issues really start way back in the elementary school in terms of expectations and the ability to believe that all of our kids can excel. We wanted to incorporate mandatory quarterly development courses in each of the above areas. And then we wanted to ensure that the school administration both observed the teachers to make sure that they were incorporating into the classroom the skills and tools that they learned in these classes, and to assess the implementation. Now that you've gone to the courses and you're implementing them in the classroom, what are differences that we're seeing in student outcomes, student behaviors, and actually talk to the students about how they're feeling about their connection with their teachers. The second goal we had was around AP, and it was to identify, document, and publish processes of how to get into an AP course. You know, what people at our table talked about is that this is still a mystery to a lot of parents in the district, and it shouldn't be. And so, again, we wanted to set up an action committee. This one comprised of both school administrators, specialty teachers, math, language arts, guidance, students, both in AP and not in AP, because we thought it was important to hear from students who are in AP about how they got there. Let's see what they were doing right that actually got them into these AP classes, and also talk to the students who are not in AP and what are the reasons. Were they deselected from AP? Did they not have an interest in AP? And if so, why did they have an interest? Once we get that information, perform an analysis, and provide recommendations for a new process, and most importantly, a communication plan. A communication plan that's going to be internal to the school so that everybody in the school, the teachers, the administrators, guidance, etc., know the process, to the parents, to other community stakeholders, and to the students. And then, importantly, monitor the process. So, I think we started with saying that our reasonable time period is probably 2 years, that the percentage of African American students in AP classes in the high school should reflect their population in the school. That should be the goal, that it's equal. Our third goal was an enhanced management process for enforcement of the district's residency requirements. There was a lot of conversation about this and some questions. We don't know the answer. But with research, we could find out the answer as to how big the problem is of out-of-district students. Some people think it's very big, some people just don't really know. Once we find out, so we want to research the trend data for out-of-district students. Determine the success of the current enforcement process. Figure out if that has any impact on some of the achievement disparities that we're seeing. And then recommend modifications and enhancements of the enforcement mechanisms for the out-of-district students. That's it.
Of course, that's the overachieving table. Had 3 goals. We only had 2. Yes. So we're going to go to this table back here and then end up with this table here.
Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine Ray and I'm an 8th grade science teacher at South Orange Middle School, and most of my table is gone and I can't quite read his handwriting, but I know I learned a lot about what's going on at the levels below as far as the pressures that there are specifically with math, even going into middle school. And I think I'll echo a lot of the same sentiments that many of you spoke about. But one of the issues that came up is that the district website is not so user-friendly. Unless you are really just asking questions. I think you guys mentioned something about a document, or somebody mentioned something about having a document where this is what's necessary to get into these courses. It needs to be more user-friendly. And if we're trying to decrease this gap that we have, rather than just saying, well, the information's there, all you have to do is seek it out, and, make sure that every family from K through 12 has it. Because in my personal opinion, by the time the students get into 9th grade, I think the ladies that attend Columbia said that it's too late. I know when I'm also a graduate of Columbia High School, and luckily enough, I did all the AP coursework and didn't have academic issues, but I know some of my friends did. So that was one of the issues. The second one was that I think a lot of parents don't really even understand something as simple as reading a schedule. Looking at a schedule, I remember, I don't know what the Columbia High School schedule looks like now, but you could look at a code and see what a certain number was and know what level you were in. I don't think that parents know that. Also, I think the term college prep is very misleading. Because if you're talking to a guidance counselor and they call you and they say, oh, well, your child's in college prep. Okay, if I'm a parent, I'm going to think, oh, okay, well, you're getting prepared for college. So I think there needs to be a change with that, or an explanation somewhere as far as what college prep is or isn't. Another issue, I actually am not even looking at this. We wrote a lot. Some other, stop calling college prep. Provide accurate information about the demographic profile as far as racial identity or things like that in each subject matter. Also maybe giving responsibility or trying to determine who is responsible for informing parents about the coursework that is necessary in order to get your children to those goals that you all have for them. I think that's very important also. Letting them know what the requirements are for math or science. I know when I get an email, I tell my students, I don't know if they're telling their parents or not, but personally, I don't think that's supposed to come from me to email 280 parents about what the requirements are to get into honors biology or whatever. And also some information about the mobility of moving from levels. I think that needs to be provided because I don't think there is much. I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem to be that way. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are all here. And I don't even know if I read anything off this really. Maybe the relationship, providing information about the relationship between level placements and the status of the colleges that are attended. I think that's about. I really can't read his handwriting. That's about it.
Still some good stuff came out of it, so you freestyled very well. Our last table.
Hello, everyone. I was drafted. We had a young man at the table. I cannot tell you what his name is because you cannot say his name. It's private. And he pointed us in a direction that may not be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, or timely. However, we went there. He talked about discrimination, ego deflation, and a lack of cultural diversity in the schools. He contrasted an experience last year where he did not have what he would call a strong, devoted teacher, and he got an F in math, to this year when he's highly motivated and he's performing well in math. So our goal is to change the current feeling of exclusion, to bring academic achievement, motivation,